I'll see you guys in the dark.
You might have noticed that I have been through a lot, and yet I haven't even mentioned half of it. I've written the stories of a couple of noteworthy characters that have sailed through my stories. I would also write about a lot of others, but they wouldn't fill up a whole lot of space. Honorable mentions might be the colleague who would pull me forward forcefully to give me those cheek kisses that are customary in our countries, but have to be consensual from both sides. He didn't care for consent anyways, as I had seen, as he had aggressively stalked and sexually harassed a female coworker for 7 years. She finally broke down one day in 2019, told the whole story. I always got sexual predator vibes off of him, and his tiny squinting eyes, big belly, and half balding skull, and of course the sexist jokes, and overall demeanor. His comment to me once was in a skirt, hot summer, 13 hours a day in the buses, leaning over my ticket booth and money register, and said, "Oh, yeah, baby, I love it seeing you like that," in that leaned over position, in front of all of my passengers. I just looked at him, jaded, and then sat down. I had a lot of strange colleagues. One would smell like milk that had gone sour out of his mouth every day, and he always had a lot to talk about, up close. Another suffered from a severe case of absolutely unmanageable verbal diarrhea. Like he didn't have the time to even say hello before he had spilt out all the monologue of several minutes, doing the question-answer thing all on his own. Another one was suspected of being the one peeing in the driver room sink and later behind a bus, but nothing could ever be proven, except the pee was found in those places, and that he was alone there at those times. One colleague even took a smearing the whole toilet in turd. Yes, seriously. The cleaning staff took pictures, and I saw them. I tried to avoid shaking hands with my colleagues after that. Just a quick hello, and nod with the head, which was then not enough for the first colleague that I mentioned, so he pulled me towards him, even though I tried to resist. Another just didn't bother saying hello, and replaced the usual greeting with, "So can I lick your pussy?" Gross. And only if no one was around, of course. We wouldn't want witnesses, right? Sometimes, honestly, I felt like working in an open-air mental asylum. Not just the colleagues, also the passengers. Some of the passengers were really deranged, but also other stuff. And that's what I'll mention here. Although some will argue that being a nice guy has nothing to do with mental health, I'll let you be the judge of that. I met Patrick when he began in a security-related occupation in my bus company around 2018. We barely spoke at first, beyond drinking coffee in the same place at the same time once. Then he heard about my violent breakup, because everybody did. It couldn't be avoided. My very violent ex had to be removed several times from me at work, either it be by the police or the managers of my bus company. I was the center of many rumors at the time, and Patrick, too, got a version of all the stories going around. Patrick was in his mid-40s. He was about 180 to 190 centimeters tall, 5'9 to 6'1". Very skinny guy, glasses, a very long pointed nose, ears sticking out, and a smile that just gave off the wrong vibe for me. But I overlooked all that, thinking that I'm just superficial and judging people way too quickly. If there's one thing that I know now, it's to trust my instinct. But let us say, it was a learning process for me. I showed a picture of him to one of my friends. Just from the picture, she said, "Oof, no. There's something about him that I just don't like, besides his looks." At one point, the parents of said Patrick were in my bus. My ex was driving, and a violent altercation occurred between my ex and a third party. I wanted to find out more, so I had asked Patrick. He said that I could come over for a cup of tea at his apartment, which was 1 block away from mine, and then we could talk comfortably. I also did need internet, as I wasn't connected to anywhere that I lived, and needed to do a transaction urgently. I asked him if it was okay, and said, I quote, "Could I just totally abuse your internet connection?" Thinking that it might make him laugh a little bit. It did. He said, yeah, go ahead, sure. We decided on an evening when we both had time. And what the heck, I was happy to go over to someone that I thought might be a future friend. He too said nothing but friendly things, sent me some cheering up text messages. I started doubting myself, thinking that I have become too harsh on people. I went over there that evening, happy to be able to maybe vent a little bit, get a good cup of tea, and just talk to someone about this and about that. With all the drama going on, I definitely needed it. I came to his apartment, admired it for a little while. We got down to talking. We had a good cup of tea, then a second one. I bitched about my life. He bitched about his. The first red flag was him immediately calling his ex-girlfriend a narcissist and telling me things that she had done. No proof, just words. He knew about my story, and I didn't even have to fill in the blanks. He had seen it for himself. He said something about that if I felt scared, I could always come over to his apartment and stay there. I said that that was very sweet, but I would be okay. I had extra locks on my door, and the police were not far away. They knew everything that was going on, so thank you. I went home. Life went on for a few days. I needed internet once again. No, I did not know at the time that you can use your phone as an internet access. Unfortunately, I found that out way later. I asked Patrick again if I could use his. He said, yeah, sure, come on over. I went over there again, and this time he seemed a little more exasperated. I asked if everything was okay. He said it was. He tried looking over at my computer screen to see what I was doing, and that really stressed me out, as it was highly personal. We started talking again afterwards. I had a nice cup of tea. He started putting his hand on my thigh. I pulled back a little bit. I was uncomfortable. He waited for a total of 5 minutes to try sneaking his hand over the back of the couch onto my shoulder. I again pulled away. I was so far on the end of the couch I could fall off if I had to do it again. And for the third time, a hand tried sneaking up my thigh again. As obvious as I could be, things got very clear for me at that moment. I told him, okay, see what you're doing there? Maybe I'm completely misunderstanding. I don't know how flirting goes, he interrupted, and said, oh, me either, with that weird glimmer in his eyes. I resumed, my friend, I really am looking for a relationship. Just a friendship relationship. No flirting or anything. I just wanted to talk a little bit and have some human contact. His demeanor changed in a split second. His eyes went cold, dark, if that even makes any sense. They just went blank. I was telling a story, but he cut me short and told me that it's getting late. Then something completely unrelated to what I was talking about. Something about our company putting away too many stamps on their letters. What the fuck, I thought. I said, okay, so do you want to hear the rest of my story? He just didn't answer. Didn't even look at me. I said, okay, I'll just be going. He almost interrupted me. Yes, you better go. I was taken back, but oh well. If that's how he sees it. I picked up my computer and my jacket, then went home. A few days later, a person who was told by another person by someone else, you know, the rumor mill, told me, I hear you once had a crush on Sebastian. My world stood still for a few seconds. How could this be? It was like my deepest secret, and I never acted on it. Because I'm unfortunately, and stupid, very honest in my relationship with my ex. Never cheated on him, even though he was treating me like less than human, like a dog, or maybe even an object. But yes, in fact, I did some time ago have a crush on Sebastian. A big one, a painful one. Then I put two and two together. I mentioned it to Patrick, and only to him, because at one stupid point in our conversation, I thought that I could somehow trust him. What an idiot I am. I could go back in time and just slap myself. So to get revenge on me for not sleeping with him, he went on and spilled my secret left and right. Tried in more than one way to humiliate me. The Sebastian secret hurt the most, though. Like really, I cried for some time in my minuscule apartment, far away from prying eyes. One morning I ran into him in the bus driving room where we all had our lockers. I looked at him. He angrily said, "What?" and then walked away. I will not waste more time recounting the couple of times that I ran into him at work. He He let me know what a sin I had committed. I had the chance to jump on this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to a one-on-one with his irresistible skinny butt, and didn't, and therefore I had knowingly chosen to be destroyed as punishment. The term nice guy comes to mind. My little better-knowing part of me reminded the rest of me, I warned you. I promised myself that I would from now on stop trying to find the good in people and just see them for what they are. And I've kept that promise pretty well ever since. About a year later, Patrick went into a relationship with a person that I know from a whole other aspect. I knew about characters very well by then, and I also knew that I would have ruined their relationship in a heartbeat if she knew that he had come after me like that first. Let's say that she and I have some history. I knew that I could plant a bomb in the relationship. For a second, it made me feel powerful. Patrick did everything that he could to avoid me, and when he couldn't, he would suddenly act very nice to me. It was fake as hell, but at least he tried. I never did anything. It's not my place to go around destroying people's lives, even when they try to destroy mine. My philosophy, as cheesy as it may sound, is that they destroy themselves more in the process. Also, I actually hope miserable, destructive people can taste their real happiness and find that revenge is never as sweet as real happiness, and that you just don't feel like destroying others when you find it in you to make yourself happy for real. Hope any of that makes sense. Before I begin, I would like to point something out. In the bus depot that I worked for at the time, we did have a separate toilet box thing for female workers, but there was a limited number of keys to it, and I was waiting to get one. In the meantime, I had to go down to the mixed toilets. I mean both male and female bus drivers, and train drivers. And one of the stalls was actually open, so I did see some things that I didn't want to. When I came into the bathroom and didn't realize that there was someone in the open stall, the other one was closed, but the walls didn't go all the way down to the floor. There was a good 15-centimeter gap, probably about 6 inches. This does come into play later on in the story. This person that I'll be describing is not exactly a dwarf in a physical sense, but stunted growth, if you like. I'll call him Steve. He came up to my shoulder in height, had a very big nose, far-sight glasses that made his eyes look very small, and his hands were very tiny. Always felt like squeezing a wet fish when you shook his hand. And you did. Because he would not let you go to or from work without making you shake his hands. I at first, as people do, felt a little sorry for him. He seemed good-natured, a little lonely, so I was just nice to him. His job at the bus driving company was to clean, and he took that very much to heart. So much so that one of the first times we spoke, he told me how he had cancer in the stomach, but came to work every day anyways. I said that I was sorry to hear that, but did the cancer go away then, at some point? He seemed fine to me. He answered that yes, after a 3-year fight with it, it went away, but it did now prevent him from eating cucumbers, and that he had never been on sick leave a day during that time. I'm no cancer expert, so I just took his word for it. But several sources confirmed he had indeed never had such problems. That was just one of the things that he said to make people, especially girls, feel sorry for him. Oh well, maybe it's because he's lonely, so he wants a little bit of attention. I didn't think more of that. Continued treating him with respect, and talked with him just as I would any other person. Then little by little, I was informed about his foot fetish. He didn't talk about it like that. He once casually said, "You know, Julie, your feet must be a little wore sometimes after a long day's work in the buses, right?" My female friend said that I'm good at massaging feet. If you want, I can massage your feet. I just said, no, thanks. I'm fine. With that forced smile that you make when you're very uncomfortable. He didn't insist. I found out later why. But a couple of days later, he came back on the subject, adding this time that the sensation is a lot better if a woman is wearing tight pantyhose. I was like, yeah, right. It's not happening, dude. It would be a year before I accidentally fell on the subject of Steve in his desire to massage feet with a female coworker. She said, "Oh no, did he also offer you his services?" I was astounded. I said, "Well, he did say that he'd like to massage my feet, yes. Why did you ask? Did he ask you as well?" Apparently, he didn't just ask. He sort of just took her shoes off when she was on break in her bus so that she was not sitting at the wheel, and then just started rubbing them. I asked her, "Were you by any chance wearing tights?" She cringed and said, "Yeah, I know. I was just too taken aback." I didn't react at first, but I was completely terrified that another colleague would walk by and see what was going on. I panicked a little. She managed to take possession of her feet back after a couple of minutes, but felt very uncomfortable. I got curious and discreetly did a little detective work on the case. I found out that he had also put a lady working in the office of the bus company through this, but that did not go well for him, as he was an inch away from getting fired on the spot, and that was the only reason why he didn't dare to insist with me. Steve liked mopping the floor in the downstairs toilet, mentioned in the beginning, especially when he saw that I was going that way. I was more and more creeped out every time, as he would loudly ask me questions through the toilet wall. It wasn't closed up above either. Private questions about my boyfriend, how is he doing, when the breakup was going on, things like that. You know, I didn't ever vibe with him. He even asked through the wall, "How are you doing? Are you okay?" At the time, he would make the mop go in and out underneath the stall, like I'm trying to do my business, and this dude is just everywhere. I tried telling him that I'm not comfortable discussing this through the toilet wall, and it's neither the time or the place for it. Honestly, I ended up being severely constipated at one point. I got so stressed out because he would just forget my request the very next day, and again start telling me things about my ex that literally didn't concern anybody but me and my ex. But now the info was flying in and out through the walls, and I couldn't control who heard it and who didn't. I asked him to stop, and he'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry," and then the mop would disappear for half a minute, and then come back underneath the other side. I finally got the female toilet keys, and at least some torture was avoided. But then he decided that he would try to play a role in my breakup, and as my ex was spilling out the most private details of my life, he would think of left and right. Steve had a lot of information that he had no business knowing, at least, but it was what it was. I was constantly in contact with the police at that point, and had them intervene several times, because my ex was out of control and very violent. It was an exhausting time, but I once again decided to hold my head up and just wait till it was all over. Steve decided to pose as a white knight. He would come and sit in my bus talking with me, trying to get some information out of me, and took bus ride after bus ride, also telling me a little bit about his home life that was pretty shitty, as to make us connect in some way. I just went with it, talked a little about things that were unfair. He then started to make a point of always telling me that he was very clean. He liked to clean and cook, take care of his lady friend, when he had one. He did have an on-again, off-again girlfriend at the time, a morbidly obese, diabetic woman that he claimed he had saved from a mental institution. I'll call her Mary. One day he saw me arriving at the terminal in my bus. He quickly came up to me in my bus, looked in a very special way at me, like his eyelids were half closed, and asked me how I was doing. I answered, "Good. How about you?" He said, "Good, in love and all." I replied, "In love with Mary, right?" He answered, "With people and others." I lifted an eyebrow, but thought nothing more of it. One evening, I was walking home from work. I loved the 20-minute walk after a leg-stiffening day in the bus, but because of my ex's death threats and stalking, I had to be wary of my surroundings at all times. And I didn't mind people accompanying me, whoever it was. Steve asked if he could walk me home, so I accepted. What he told me during that walk will always stay with me. We talked a bit about the crazy ex, and then Steve says, "Do you know he said that he heard you slept with some guy, and if he finds out who that guy is, he'll beat the shit out of them?" I felt queasy. I just said, "Oh, yeah, well, he's prone to expressions of anger." Steve said, "I should just go ahead and say that it was me, and take his anger on me. I can handle a beating." I was flabbergasted. I gasped at this. "Oh, please, just don't, okay? Don't ever." That was all. I changed the subject. I just couldn't stomach any more. Meanwhile, he was regularly sending me PMs via Facebook Messenger. I felt like I owed him answers because he was, after all, on my side. It was pretty much always the same. "Hi, Julie. How are you doing? How's your work this week? Morning or evening hours?" One very hot summer afternoon, I was wearing a black skirt that went to the allowed 10 centimeters over the knee, and black tights, my black working shoes, and the company uniform t-shirt. When Steve saw me, he said directly hello to my shirt, without even looking at me, and actually licked his mouth. He hung out for a couple of round trips in my bus, and at one point during rush hour, I had to pee, but in those hours you don't really have a lot of time between arriving at the terminal and having to drive on, connecting with the next bus route. The path to the station toilet was about 20-meter walk, maybe about 65 feet. Unlock a door with a special key, walk up to the stairs, and then go into either the men's or the ladies' room. Before that, you have to lock your money register, help any passenger that is needed, stop the bus engine, things like that. That is a lot to do in just 2 minutes, plus the time you take in the toilets. So that day, I just didn't want to be late. So I quickly locked my register, turned off the bus, and slipped out of my driver's post. That's when something completely absurd and surreal happened. I actually ran the 20 meters, but I wasn't running alone. Steve was running just an arm's length behind me. I didn't have the time to stop and address it, but it was the top 5 most awkward moments of my life. Imagine if someone saw it, and somehow, oh my God, misinterpreted it. I was actually pretty angry. Who runs after a female bus driver up to the toilets anyways? He had all the time to go to the bathroom if he wanted to. I was never quite able to shake off the feeling of the awkward anger towards him, and even more so when I learned that he was in fact very bored most of the time. He liked to stir up drama to entertain himself. It was just a golden opportunity for that, with my hellish life at the time. For that, I was extremely angry. At one point, after being through all of this, and much more, all the happenings simultaneously during the 5 years, my mental health finally broke down. I ended up getting some psychiatric help, medication, and I couldn't keep on doing my job. Steve would sometimes write his copy-paste messages. "Hello, Julie. How are you doing? Are you working next week?" At one point, I moved away from that city. All the hellish memories, but Steve would still write that same message over and over again. I would at some point stop answering. I was having dark thoughts at the time, and I was focusing on getting better. A little me time for the very first time in my life. Then he wrote, "Why aren't you answering? Did I do something wrong? I don't understand what I did to you. Why won't you answer me?" I explained that I'm simply going through something and can't be there anymore. "Okay, I miss you. Are you coming back to work?" He would write a couple more times, but then he finally stopped. And that is what I'll do for now. These were some of the things that I went through, and they were more cringy than even funny. Maybe one day I could laugh a little bit about them. I'm not working there anymore, and after 8 months of antidepressants and a mental breakdown, psychiatrist help, stuff like that, I'm currently living a whole new life with a man that I love dearly, who treats me with respect and true courtesy. And of course, love and support. We are happily engaged after 3 years together, and as far as I see the future, life is finally looking bright. I wish everyone listening to this a happy life, and remember, never give up.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.